If you're like Ivan, you don't want to be two and many. You want to be the one and only Ivan on Film Reviews. I'm Alan Ning. I'm with Zorianna Kit, and today we're talking about the one and only Ivan on Disney+. And before we begin, be sure to like, subscribe to the Film Threat YouTube channel, and comment below as to whether you agree with us or not. All right, the one and only Ivan is a gorilla named Ivan who tries to piece together his past with the help of an elephant. They hatch a plan to escape from captivity. Directed by Thea Sharrock. Written by Mike White, stars Sam Rockwell, Bryan Cranston, Phillipa, Chaka, Ron Funches, Helen, Mirren, Devito, Angelina Jolie. This is a talking animal film. Zorianna, what's your opinion of talking animal films?
Well, this film, the irony here is that this film is about wild animals who are caged and being used for entertainment purposes. And I have to tell you, since the beginning of the invention of film, Hollywood has been using real animals in captivity, caged for entertainment purposes to horrific results, meaning not caring about their welfare. We've had, horses running until they collapse and die. We've had orcas, captive orcas, captive dolphins. We've had captive chimpanzees, elephants. We've had all sorts of animals used in films for our entertainment without any regard to their welfare. So this movie really pleased me from the standpoint that, technology has come so far that we don't have to use real captive animals in order to portray them on screen. Technology is so amazing that you get a film like the one and only Ivan, where the gorilla looks so realistic and all the other animals do too. So that I loved that.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think, I do like the fact that you don't have to have real animals anymore to be in your movies. I was, the first time I saw this was last year with The Call of the Wild. I think there I really liked, the fact that, okay, the dog wasn't real. He was able to do things that the story required without having to go through extreme training or punishment again to do what he wanted. And I like that. But I think what I liked about Call of the Wild was, they tried to replicate a real dog as much as they can. I just don't know that it necessarily worked with the one and only Ivan.
With the dog or with all the animals?
With all the animals. I don't know. It's weird, but I can accept talking animals doing things that humans do when they're cartoons like Zootopia. But when they're done with real looking animals, it didn't work for me. The Call of the Wild, they needed to replicate an actual dog. Here, these are animals that talk, animals that have human emotions. And I'm just not sure I'm really buying into it at this time.
So you didn't buy that in The Lion King or Jungle Book either?
I did. It worked there for me.
Right?
Here, right? And maybe it's because I was familiar with the Lion King story that I was just kind of accepting things at that point.
Yeah.
But with this one, it just wasn't working. It sounds like you felt differently.
Well, it worked for me, but also as someone who's a huge animal advocate, and it's an area that I have worked in, volunteered in, have been in for such a long time that it's like finally we don't have to use animals to portray animals on screen. Mm-hmm. And I think the VFX is believable enough these days where it works. Yeah. Also, keep in mind, this movie, it skews very young.
Yeah.
Considering the theme of the story, it skews so young. I would venture to say like elementary school kids. I think it might even be too old for middle school kids. High school kids, forget it. But it does skew young. And this is kind of where, I don't want to say I had a problem with it, but I had to kind of reconfigure things in my mind because it's based on a book. And the book is based on true
A true event. Yeah, a true Ivan.
Yes, a true Ivan. And so as someone who has worked in animal conservation and has seen things that you cannot unsee, I know that the story of Ivan is this gorilla lived in a 14 by 14 concrete enclosure for 27 years and never saw the outside world. Mm-hmm. And so in this film, it's a much more sanitized version where Ivan, none of the animals are in distress about being in captivity here. All they know is that they have directives from an elephant that they must be free and they must be in the wild. They don't really know what that means, but that's just the overall message is animals should be in the wild. And it's such a broad theme. Yeah. And it's such a sanitized theme because they don't touch into any of the darker themes, which they're not going to. It's Disney. But for young kids, perhaps that's the version that's needed. And at least if you get them started on animal conservation, at that age, then they grow with it. So from that sense, the message works.
Yeah, for me, I understand and absolutely sympathize with your background with animal conservation, and so I understand the basis of the story and the message of the story. But if I remove that and just say this is a story about talking animals, my real issue with it is, I think deep down they're saying, animals should be in captivity, and animals and it kind of addresses the idea of circuses and the nature of circuses that we are no longer able to kind of digest in a way. But the thing is they presented, Bryan Cranston is Mac, who's the circus leader. And he's a very sympathetic character. Mm-hmm. And it's not like he created the circus to, he created it because he loves Ivan. He loves the world of the circus and making money at it. And so he's, he's not
the villain, and he's not the villain here. And there is no clear villain in here. There is. Yeah,
and that's my point. In film and in stories, you really want to have the antagonist and the protagonist to have a great deal of distance between the two, because that creates drama. But when the antagonist and protagonist are almost on the same levels, you end up with a fairly bland story, or a story that doesn't, whose message just doesn't have the impact that you want it to have.
It doesn't have the impact. That is the correct wording, Alan. The movie does not have the impact that it should. However, for that young age group, perhaps it's okay because at least there is a message of circuses are not how we should be seeing wild animals. And if that's where we can convince the kids early that this is how circuses are not something that we should be attending, then that's great, because then they'll grow up and then they might be able to move on to some of the more headier aspects.
So let me ask you this: do you think the original Dumbo, the cartoon, was pro or anti-circus? Because I think that was definitely meant for kids.
Well, I kept thinking of this film and going, this is the new Disney, right? It's super sanitized. But back then, Bambi was dark and Dumbo was dark and Fox and the Hound was dark. I mean, those were some tragedies. I mean, Bambi's brother died.
Peter Pan, people die in Peter Pan.
Right?
So kids were able to handle it back then.
Yes. So on the one hand, I was kind of disappointed that Disney no longer goes to that place of darkness. And now it's much more, I keep saying the word sanitized, but that's really what it is now. But on the other hand, I do praise them because it's an important subject matter and they do have a very large platform. And I like it that it's nice to see them use it responsibly by tackling this issue. I just think that kids are not as snowflakey as we might think they are. Perhaps they could tackle something deeper. I mean, Dumbo being separated from his mother in the animated movie was gut wrenching. Here, an elephant arrives an orphan and seems to bear no scars of, you know, losing its environment, losing its family, and it's just going, hey, Ivan, tell me a story. And it's like, yeah, no, that's not how it would be. And certainly, you know, not even in Dumbo would Dumbo be trotting around asking for someone to tell him a story.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Other than that, you know, it's always fun to hear Sam Rockwell and Angelina Jolie.
Yes, he's so good. He's so good. He actually brings a lot of heart to Ivan. I really, you know, Ivan really did touch me, and I do think that Sam had a lot to do with it.
And he gave a very grounded performance. You know, it's not the, you know, the Galaxy Quest Sam Rockwell.
No, it's not.
Okay, so based on its cause, some reservations you had on the story itself, I would say you gave it a 7.
Yeah, you know, 6. I'm gonna slightly. Oh gosh, you know, I was torn between 6 and a 7 because, you know, I from a conservation standpoint, I really do commend any type of conservation that's happening, and this movie does it. And I do have to think of the audience that it's for, and it's not for me. I'm way too conservationist in the other way, so it's definitely not gonna be for me. So if it's gonna capture the preschoolers and elementary school kids, then great. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with the 7. For you just didn't like talking animal movies. You probably gave it a 5.
Yeah, 5 is pretty. You know, this is my thing with Disney live action versus Disney animation. Disney animation and Pixar especially, they will spend years and years and years working on that story, going over story beats, storylines, and so forth. When it comes to live action, they don't do that. You know, they write a script and they shoot it, and I think that's really the problem that the one and only Ivan suffers is, you know, they didn't spend a great deal of time really pouring over that script, and I'd also say that in general for their live action films.
Well, if anyone wants to know more about the real Ivan, there's a great National Geographic documentary called Urban Gorilla, which he's a part of, and it's on YouTube for free. So that's a good one to check out because you really learn a lot about Ivan and his conditions. And then you just see the difference between the Disney version where, you know, he's got it's not even a 14 by 14. I mean, there's like everything in there. He's got a TV in his,
a sofa, a couch, and water bed.
Totally. even a dog friend, you know.
Yeah. And
real Ivan had nothing. So definitely worth checking out the documentary if you want to know more about how Ivan's story really turned out.
All right, well, that's the one and only Ivan on Disney Plus. For more news and reviews on independent films, be sure to visit us at filmthread.com. And with that, let's get out of here.